Donald Trump's comments about banning Muslim entry to the U.S. continue to spark debate on and off the campaign trail. Republican strategist and CBS News contributor Frank Luntz spoke to a panel of Muslim Americans late last week about anti-Muslim sentiment in the country. CBS News continues to roll out more from that discussion, including this revealing conversation about why some Muslim Americans don't fear ISIS.
I want a show of hands. How many of you have a problem with this administration bombing ISIS? Raise your hands if you have a problem with it. Yes, bombing ISIS. No, it is a very simple, it is the most simple question I can ask.
Problems with them bombing ISIS.
I don't have a problem
She
at all.
raised her hand.
I do, actually, because I think I think that I'm kind of a pacifist. I have a very strict non-interventionist foreign policy.
So what are you supposed to do when they're coming after us?
Coming after us?
Yes.
I mean,
ISIS is explicit. They are explicit, and you don't want us.
I don't want us.
Hold on.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Honestly, I think, listen.
No, I'm asking her.
It's misconstrued.
Hold on, sir. Let her finish.
She means if this
let her finish.
Well, actually,
show respect for her.
Thank you.
And let her finish.
I appreciate you trying to have my back. But initially, I thought you were talking about civilians. But now you're still talking about ISIS, and I've sparked a thought in my mind. It's not going to solve anything. You're not going to. How many years I was born in '93. My whole entire life, we've been in a time of war. Never in my entire life had I ever heard of a life where the United States was not at war with anyone else. ISIS does not have the capability to destroy America. Our military spending is better than the next 7 or 10 countries combined. I'm not scared of ISIS. I'm not. I'm scared of my government, actually. I'm more scared of my government than I am of ISIS.
Are you more scared of your government than ISIS?
Yeah, and this goes back to my previous point, talking about just race and being Muslim in America. I feel like every morning when I wake up, am I gonna be mad because I'm black in America, or am I gonna be mad because I'm Muslim in America? Because the people who are charged to take care of it, like I teach 7th grade science, so like I teach these kids who I'm seeing already in their eyes, they're like, they're being told to be socialized in a certain way just so they don't get, brutalized by police officers. I see that their minds are being warped in different ways so they'd have to like act a certain way so they don't get like, killed in the streets. And that's heartbreaking every single day to see a kid. I had a conversation recently being like, why don't we give police officers tranquilizers? Because at least if they're racist, we'll make it to the car. That's just heartbreaking to hear a 12-year-old say. So yeah, I'm a little bit more afraid of our government, like she said. Like ISIS is a small faction.
Are you more afraid of your government or of ISIS?
I'm absolutely more afraid of my government. My government has not taken any measures to ensure my security as an American. Instead, they have targeted my community and my faith and me. They have created a culture and climate of hyper-paranoia that targets Muslims and makes me feel like I'm afraid to be an American walking around on the street. Why aren't white people afraid? Why? Their government has protected them historically from any racist laws. They are not being surveilled. They are not being monitored. They're not being evaluated. They are not being targeted.
Not just domestically. I mean, I agree with a lot of what she's saying, but I'm also worried about my government's policies abroad, which we've already touched upon. But the fact that our solution to every problem is to bomb it away, I mean, that's absurd. And it's been created. I mean, there's so many studies we can talk about, but creating a cycle of violence where you're responding to violence with violence has been happening for decades, and we're living the repercussions of that.
I would say I'm afraid of neither. I think there's a boogeyman syndrome that's being exploited here by top politicians like Donald Trump, definitely, and it's very clear that people are afraid because of these incidents, and the politicians will prey on this and say, yes, we'll keep you safe, we'll bomb them, it's just silly.
Frank, as a Muslim, doesn't wear a scarf, and he's not darker skinned.
And white passing.
As a Muslim Republican, Barack Obama.
No offense, but it's different for people who look like me. It's absolutely different.
No, my wife is not walking around in fear. I mean, she doesn't cover her head, but I mean,
it's different.
I already agreed with you guys that no, I mean, clearly there's a lot of attacks, but I agree with Linda's point that there is, if you look at the statistics of it, this fear is irrational, right? Because there's more, attacks committed by white supremacists by far since 9/11 than Muslim radicals. So it's in it. Not your fear. Not your fear. No, I'm talking about that specific fear that's out there in, let's say, America at large. That Muslims ISIS is going to kill us. ISIS is the boogeyman. So it happens. You know, this happens.
I will say what I do is I'm prepared because I know what's going on. For example, if I'm going to the airport, I get there early because I know my name is an Islamic name. It might take me a little bit longer to go through the process. Things like
What's
that.
your first name?
El Hajj. So
So-
that's the most. That's the OG Muslim name. Like you earned that name. You know. So yeah. So regarding that. In that aspect, like when it comes to politics, there always has to be a bad guy. And the Cold War was the Russians. Now we graduated to the Muslims, so we're the new bad guys.
You really graduated?
You know, they progressed. That's the Muslims are the new bad guys, quote
We need to
unquote.
realize that.
So that's how you get votes. You know, it's fear mongering.
The new boogeyman.
I
That's
also
it.
want to add on that, like, you know, the way this conversation is framed is that, like, you're just kind of asking us a lot about, like, ISIS and foreign policy, when really Muslims care about so many issues going on domestically. We're fighting for economic justice. We're fighting for immigration justice. We're fighting against police brutality because every single facet of our community is facing that at this moment because of how diverse we are. So the fact that this conversation is only framed around a certain kind of you know, rhetoric is kind of going into that when people are watching this, they're only thinking that this is all we think about. Actually, we care about a lot of things and a lot of issues with our own country.
Because we are American and we're not just defined by our religion. You know, we work for, you know, people who can't afford, you know, healthcare. We work for people who can't afford to go to good schools. We work with people who have been abused, you know, who've been raped. You know, there are so many other issues besides our religion. So I'm very passionate about how do we build coalitions with people who have suffered like us? But let's all come together. You know, this is not a Muslim-only issue. You know, I'm an American. We are Americans here. You know, and we have so many facets to our identity. We cannot be characterized in this neat little box.